When we talk about security for infrastructure as a service VMs in Azure, we have always heard buzzwords like next-gen firewall, UDR, endpoint ACL, DDoS, VNet isolation, and network security groups. We will talk about each of these components in the upcoming videos, but in this video we will focus on network security groups or NSGs. Before we begin, let's understand what a network security group or an NSG is. NSG is a set of access control rules that can be wrapped around a VM or a subnet. These rules then inspect the inbound and outbound traffic to determine whether to allow or deny a packet. If we look through one of the network security group rules in detail, we would find the following properties. Most of these properties should be self-explanatory, like the source IP, source port, destination IP, destination port. The direction specifies whether the traffic is inbound or outbound, and the action determines if the traffic should be allowed or denied. The priority determines the precedence of the rule. As the priority number for the rule gets lower, the higher the precedence the rule gets. Now, let's look at when you would use an NSG. Suppose you have two subnets in the Azure Virtual Network and you want to completely isolate the traffic between them. You would then use our good old NSG friends. You could also use NSGs to allow only specific traffic between the two subnets, thereby limiting access between the two Azure subnets. The other scenario where you would want to use an NSG is to block or control traffic from the internet or your on-premise network. Now, let's look at how the precedence works when an NSG is applied both at a VM or NIC level and at a subnet level. Let's suppose the purple colored traffic is set to deny at a VM level network security group and allow at a subnet level network security group. In an outbound traffic scenario, the traffic does not pass the first filter of the VM level NSG, thereby gets dropped. In an inbound traffic scenario, the traffic passes through the subnet level NSG. However, when it reaches the VM level NSG, it gets dropped. Now, let's reverse the roles. The VM level NSG has an allow rule and the subnet level NSG now has a deny rule for the traffic. In this case, the outbound traffic passes the first filter of the VM level NSG but gets dropped at the subnet level NSG. And for incoming traffic, the traffic gets dropped at the first filter of the subnet level NSG. Now that you have understood the concepts of a network security group, let's look at how to implement it, shall we? There are several ways to implement an NSG, like Azure CLI, JSON template, or even the Azure portal, depending on whether you have the Azure Classic or the Azure ARM subscription. However, if you don't want to do the weightlifting and want an easy to use simple UI based interface for managing with a single pane of glass for all your Azure subscriptions, you could, I'm going to make a shameless plug for a free tool I created, use the simple NSG tool, or as I like to call it, the ridiculously simple NSG tool. I'm going to walk you through the tool and explain some of the features. You would first need to select the type of subscription. It could be the classic ASM model or the new ARM model. If you have a custom environment like Azure China or Azure US Government, you could choose that as well. If you don't, you can leave it as default and then choose login. Once you click login, you would then have an option of choosing the subscription from the dropdown. You can choose the subscription you want to manage and hit the load button. This will list all the NSGs in the subscription. The option to create a new NSG is provided here. And then you also have the Azure subnets and the Azure Virtual Network info, which we'll get to in a minute. Once you double click on an NSG, you would find the list of rules populate. You can create a new rule by clicking on a new rule, fill the fields, and then hit the submit button. And you would find your new rule listed. If you want to modify an existing rule, you could do so by clicking the modify option. You can change any of the fields except the name and priority, and then click the submit option. If you choose to delete a rule, you can click the delete option, you can confirm it, and then the rule is deleted. The really cool feature is the filter option. You could filter the rule based on any property. You enter the keyword and then hit filter. And also you could export the rules to a CSV file. Suppose you want to find the NSG associated with a particular subnet. You could do so by choosing the right combination of Azure Virtual Network and Azure Subnet and then hit the Get Associated NSG button. Also, you can add many more subscriptions, even coexist ASM and ARM subscriptions together and manage all your NSGs with a single UI pane. The link to download the tool is provided below in the description box, and also to see how to implement it using Azure PowerShell portal or the CLI, please refer to the articles in the description below as well. Once again, thank you very much for watching.